Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm a little bit late. I was hoping that I could broadcast from my backyard, but a couple of things happened. First of all, the weather did not cooperate. It's a bit sunny right now, but it is a little chilly. And also, as some of you know who follow me on Facebook, the cicadas are are alive and well in my corner of the world. They're infesting the backyard, and they are going nuts right now. It was rainy like crazy here, and they don't like the rain. Hi, Jonathan. Hi, Jack. Going crazy right now, and it's really loud. So I thought guess I'm going to have to do this inside. So I promise when the weather's better and maybe the damn cicadas calm down, um, that I will do a real backyard episode. So I'm sorry I had to switch to inside for this episode, but I promise I will do an actual backyard episode in the future. But I couldn't cancel because there's so much to say about this Beach Boys doc. So Mark, hello. I watched it on Friday night when it came out, and I had so much to say, and so I had to come on and talk about it. And I had a feeling a lot of other people had something to say about it too. So thanks, Mark. Yeah, I'm telling you, the cicadas are at fever pitch right now. So Mike, hello. And good, Mark. Yes. In fact, what I might do is let me see, because I might have now. I can only have 5 on at a time. I have the cheap version of StreamYard. So what I might do is I'm going to give my thoughts first, and then if anybody wants to come up and talk about it, you can come on and give your thoughts as well. Because I'm sure, as I said, a lot of you and no, Mark, they they don't sound a bit like the crickets. You are correct. So of course, I'm sure you all know me, but those who don't, I'm Kid O'Toole. I am one of the co-hosts of Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast. We are not doing an episode tomorrow as we normally would because it is Memorial Day weekend here in the States. It's a holiday weekend here. So we decided, a lot of people are out seeing family, they're on vacation. And so we thought, we'll take this week off and we're going to be back next Monday, a week from tomorrow, with a regular episode. But, as I said, I saw the Beach Boys documentary when it premiered on Friday night. And I had some things to say, and I saw Jack, it is streaming on Disney Plus. And I was really looking forward to this. I really was. It's one of the reasons that I decided to re-up my subscription to Disney, because there was Let It Be, obviously, this, and the Jim Henson documentary that's coming up, directed by Ron Howard. I'm really psyched about that as well. So I thought, hey, I'm really looking forward to all that. So, I was, as I said, really excited to see this. Let me preface this by saying, and some of you out there may be really diehard Beach Boys fans. I am not a super diehard Beach Boys fan, so let me say flat out that I am not. And so, but I'm a fan. I know the basic stuff. Huge Pet Sounds fan. Love their early stuff. I've seen them live. Not obviously in their heyday. I saw them in the 80s. So, I consider myself a fan. So when I went into this, I thought, okay, this could be good. I'm looking forward to this. Well, I have to say I was pretty disappointed. I guess it should have been a clue that this was, authorized by the band. This is an official documentary. So you knew that, shall we say, this is, was going to be, shall we say, sanitized. And of course, Brian wasn't going to be able to give present day interviews. As we all know, sadly, he's suffering from dementia. And so he is not going to be able, to give his modern day perspective. They do have a lot of archival footage of him. So at least he's not completely, missing or anything from the documentary. We do, however, get a lot of Mike Love. And I don't know what you guys think about Mike Love. Great lead singer, but he has some issues, some baggage. I'm sure you all know. Hi, Harry. I'm sorry I didn't see you come in there. He has his own issues, and with the band, feels he didn't get enough credit, feels he didn't get enough songwriting credit. And are some of those issues warranted? I don't know. And I just think, though, my opinion, that he's always been extremely jealous of Brian. And, hi, Lee. I just think, let me see here. I should be showing some of these comments. Yes, Mark. I think maybe that was part of it. And yes, I think, maybe in some ways, yeah, I think maybe he was somewhat restrained. I think particularly considering his behavior at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when the Beach Boys were inducted. As we all know, Mike Love's behavior was very, very questionable. I think there's a lot of jealousy there, and he, I think that's a big part of it. But anyway, oh, Mark, you're on a roll. Title, hang on to your ego, literally. Now, I will say he was a good front man, and Brian said that many times. But but anyway, all right, let's yeah, Lindsey Buckingham's hair was certainly was very impressive. He's certainly not lost a strand. All right, let's back up here. So the documentary was directed by the same person who directed the the Bee Gees documentary that came out a few years ago, which was good. How Can You Mend a Broken Heart, which was on HBO. And I think we have to, I guess, consider Frank Marshall, his name. I guess we have to consider. I'm sorry, I've got to interrupt myself. Jonathan. Lindsey has turned into Kramer. It kind of has. Poor Lindsey. And I love him. Great guitarist. So I guess we have to first consider, who was this documentary made for? Well, to me, I think it was made for a general audience. Maybe it wasn't meant for the hardcore Beach Boys fan. Maybe it was supposed to be for a general fan, maybe who has, isn't as really isn't known for, the really diehard fans who know every song they did, every take, everything. So maybe this was meant for an introductory, um, you know, audience. I mean, maybe that's it. Because some of this I felt was, I kind of thought that's something that I knew already. So that, fair enough. But I thought that some of it was, there were parts that were just glossed over that I thought were just bizarre. Um, I thought, okay, Pet Sounds was mentioned, which obviously, I mean, if you didn't mention that, but I thought it was odd how toward, after that, um, the rest of the things they did, they just sort of said Brian stepped away. I thought they really glossed over what he had gone through personally. I'm not saying the whole documentary had to be about him, but they just sort of said, well, he just decided that he didn't want to produce anymore. And I will say I'm glad they gave Carl Wilson his due, that he stepped up. But they just sort of, from the 70s on, just kind of, sped through everything else. I thought it was very odd. I'm not saying it's a great song, but that they really didn't mention Kokomo. I mean, I thought, they played it in the end credits, but Kokomo was their big comeback song. I mean, I'm not saying it's a great, one of their best songs, but that was a big comeback for them. And they didn't mention it and just played it in the end credits. The other thing that I thought was absolutely bizarre is when they didn't talk about their 50th anniversary tour and didn't mention That's Why God Made the Radio. That comeback album they did, which was quite good. I loved that album. And of course, Brian came back. And, that was an amazing album. And no mention of that whatsoever. Now, that tour ended on a sour note. Maybe that's why they didn't mention it, because Mike Love, I think, kind of dismissed, shall we say, Brian. And I just thought that was really, a horrible way for that to end. And Brian and I can't remember if it was Al Jardine that was also dismissed. You guys can probably correct me in there, but I know Brian was for sure. So maybe they didn't want to get into that. I don't know. But to just completely not even mention that was strange. Okay, thank you, Jonathan. It was Al. I thought so. So I just thought that was absolutely just a travesty not to mention that. So there was that. They mentioned at the beginning of the film correctly that Brian studied The Four Freshmen, and there's some reviewers, not interviewers, who have reviewed this film, and I feel like the ones that have given this film such a positive review didn't really know the Beach Boys story to begin with. That they said how shocked they were that Brian had studied The Four Freshmen as closely as he did and worked out their chords and all. Well, yeah, I think that was pretty well known. What I thought was strange. Hi, Charlie and David. I don't think I saw you guys in there. Hi, guys. But that was a shock to people, which I thought was strange. What I think the documentary missed, though, is that, how kind of revolutionary that was to bring those jazz harmonies into rock music. I mean, they really didn't touch on that at all. I'm not saying they had to go through that in depth, but why wasn't that explored? I mean, they mentioned it, and they did mention how diligently the Beach Boys worked on their harmonies. They did talk about that and how they would record them, do multiple takes until they got them right. That's great. But I just felt like they dropped the ball there. I think that needed to be, because they kept saying, oh, the Beach Boys, America's band and everything. But I felt like they did talk about it a bit in the Pet Sound section, but they needed to focus more on, what made the Beach Boys unique? What did they bring to American music, American pop music, rock. I mean, I just felt like they didn't really make a case for that other than, oh, they were fun. Well, yes, they were fun, but I mean, they were more than that. And I think they dropped the ball there. Glossed over a lot of they mentioned at the beginning, oh, we went through a lot and we saw a lot of tragedy and all, and then just kind of dropped that. Why didn't they talk more about? I mean, they just mentioned at the end, R.I.P. Dennis Wilson and Carl Wilson. That's it. I mean, their deaths had a great impact on the band. I mean, to just say at the end, oh, R.I.P. I mean, I thought that was odd. I mean, Dennis Wilson's death had a big impact, and obviously Carl. So I thought that was strange to just sort of say at the end, oh, yeah, we miss them. I just think that could have been touched on more, how their deaths affected the band. Maybe this could have been the way this could have been handled is to have it be a longer documentary. Maybe have it in, I'm not saying it had to be an 8-hour documentary. I'm not saying it had to be Get Back, but maybe have it in a few parts, 2 or 3 parts. I think that maybe would have, solved a lot of these problems. Also, though, I think that, maybe having Mike Love so involved, that was an issue. I'm sure Mike Love didn't want to tell some of these stories. I just think that was very strange. Hi, Lee. No, I am not a Pet Sounds denier. I love Pet Sounds. And in fact, you could, and I think there have been documentaries on just Pet Sounds. So I understand that they couldn't do an entire, I mean, if you did just a documentary on Pet Sounds, and as I said, it has been done, I mean, that would have lengthened this documentary incredibly. So no, I am a big fan. So no, I am not. Yeah, I need to start showing these. So no, I most definitely am not. Yeah, I guess I could say I could say probably if they did use complete clips, that it would have lengthened the documentary a lot more. But still, I see your point. It is disappointing. Yeah, yes, I agree. He certainly didn't. Yeah, Mike was definitely telling the version he wanted to tell. Let's put it that way. Yeah, exactly. That's the issue I had, Mark. That their documentary, yeah, the story kind of ended with Endless Summer. I agree. So, hi, Joseph. Good to see you. Yeah, I agree. I think maybe that's true, Mark, that it also may be an issue of royalties and rights and that kind of thing. I agree. So, yeah. So there was that. Oh, and then, of course, the portrayal of course, Murray Wilson. I think certainly not a great guy, and certainly I will say the issue about him selling the publishing rights for $700,000, that was horrible. I honestly didn't know the extent of that. That probably was the moment in the documentary that was a bit new to me, and what a travesty. But then I felt like Mike Love kind of used that to then justify him suing Brian, and then saying that that's why he had to do it, because he didn't get the credit he deserved, and then saying, well, Brian and I haven't talked in a very long time, and I just felt like he was trying to get a lot of sympathy for himself. So yeah, I got that feeling, Mark. I felt like there was more to be told in that Murray Wilson story. Absolutely. Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying, Joseph. Absolutely. I just felt like there was more to be told there. Let's see. Hi, Matthew. Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what I was saying earlier. Absolutely. This should have been a 2 or 3-part documentary. There was a lot that they left out. Um, I think that was a huge problem with this, that this should have been a lot longer. I mean, there was so much that they left out that but yeah, I just felt like, and again, I'm not saying that Kokomo is a great song, but that was a big part of their story. I mean, that was their big comeback in the 80s. And so to not mention it at all, except to play it in the credits, I thought that was strange. Oh, another thing. Where was Paul McCartney? Why wasn't he interviewed? I thought that was odd. Now, maybe they honestly couldn't get him for whatever reason, but I just thought that was strange that, because he is such a good friend of Brian's and such an admirer, to just have a couple of, little, snippets of him talking. I mean, what was that about? I thought that was very strange, to just have, a little bit, because I mean, the whole thing, and to expand a bit more on the, how the Beatles and the Beach Boys influenced each other. They did talk about that a bit, but I thought that could have been expanded more upon, how, I mean, the whole thing about how Paul admired God Only Knows so much, I don't remember them talking about that very much. So that is kind of odd. So I was shocked that Paul wasn't there. And some of the people they did interview, I thought, were strange. I'm not saying that it's strange to talk to modern artists who were influenced by the Beach Boys. See, I'm so used to talking about the Beatles, guys, that I keep saying that. I mean, Ryan Tedder is, of course, a well-known producer now and has worked with Paul. But I just thought it was odd. Janelle Monáe, I actually do like some of her stuff. She's very inventive. So I guess it's not completely strange to have her there, but I just thought it was odd. And there was somebody else, and I can't remember his name now. There was another critic who was talking, who I had never even heard of, who got quite a bit of screen time. I just was amazed that they couldn't get. And Lindsey Buckingham was fine. I mean, I didn't mind him there because I'm a big fan. He's great to see there. I mean, great talent. And is a genuine fan. Has talked about being influenced by him, so I was okay there. But some of the others I thought were odd choices. I mean, I wouldn't have even minded like Dave Grohl or something, because at least he's, as a modern person to be talking about, because he's very knowledgeable. He's kind of a music encyclopedia. But some of the others I thought were odd choices to have. Beetle Eddie, hello. Wow, you're getting ready to see the Stones. Oh, that'll be fun. Good. We'll have a good time tonight. That sounds great. I saw footage of Mick on stage with another friend of mine who saw them, and boy, he's aging backwards. He's amazing. Let me put this on here. Yes, I agree. I liked hearing him talk as well. Because as I said, yeah, he knows his stuff. I felt like I agree. He had the more right to talk than some of the other people there. I agree. And again, I'm not saying like I like some of Janelle Monáe's stuff. She's very inventive, kind of a chameleon. So I didn't mind her there, but I just thought, why didn't they have a wider variety of talking heads there? Who, I mean, I don't mind some of the younger generation, but I thought, just, yeah, I didn't know that critic at all. And as I said, where was Paul? I thought that was really strange. Yeah, I would have rather seen some of Brian Wilson's peers, and then maybe some 70s, and then a couple of modern artists. That'd be fine, but have a more wide variety. Just that would have been great. Um, yeah. Yes. I like that too. Yeah, like what you said about how the Beatles gradually progressed and how the Beach Boys went from one step to the next. Also thought it was interesting. I will say this about how Brian wasn't initially won over by the Beatles. That he, I think it was "I Want to Hold Your Hand" that he said, he didn't immediately love that song. Because we tend to hear that and get the impression like, oh, Brian instantly loved them, and he didn't. So that was interesting to hear. But I just felt like the documentary was kind of one missed opportunity after another. And I thought that was really, sad because it could have been, much better. I'm going to put up the link here. So if anybody wants to come up and share their thoughts, they can. Yeah, I think, let's see. Okay, I see someone I know very well who's going to come up and give their thoughts. Okay, yes, I know this person very well. Let me add him in. All right. Hello, Mark.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. How's it going?
Just making sure I've got the right microphone going here.
Yep, absolutely. I know this is different from Zoom. I use this because I can see the comments right next to me. I can't do that with Zoom. So yep. So tell me what I've seen some of your comments already, but tell me, what did you think? What you've heard my thoughts. So what were your overall impressions?
Yeah, I have an interesting perspective on this because way back in 1978, I spent something like either 6 or 8 months in a Beach Boys cover band that did not actually get to play any gigs during that time, but I was on bass and rehearsing with this band. The band was called Wild Honey, and that may give you a clue of what they focused on, which was the latter songs of the 70s. So they weren't doing a whole lot of the classic surf songs. They were doing things like Long Promised Road, Wild Honey, and other songs of that ilk.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, I actually met Bruce Johnston once when I was playing jazz at a club in Southern California. And I asked him if I could get the sheet music for something he was the arrangement they had done of the disco version of Here Comes the Night, and he never came back. So I don't know what happened there. But anyway, to answer your question, I thought the first 2/3 of the documentary were pretty decent. First of all, the surround sound was very nice. They did some nice mixes on the sound. I thought some of their film clips should have been centered and lose the stupid sprocket hole they had on the left side. I didn't see the meaning of doing little arty things like that. They left out some really significant things. There was absolutely no mention of Brian's ear issue. Now, part of that could be because it ties back to Murray's abuse, and they didn't want to go there, but they did mention Murray's abuse in the second half of the documentary, so I don't know why they couldn't have covered it, but it's important because of Brian's focus on monophonic sound and the tie-in with Phil Spector, who was Mr. Back to Mono. And sure, they mentioned Phil Spector and showed some interesting clips, but they didn't touch on that at all. I have to mention in passing, Marilyn, they never mentioned her maiden name Rovell, which I found interesting. They just had Wilson-Rutherford. I gather that's her remarried name. And they never talked about how that marriage crumbled. But Marilyn's contributions were very interesting. Really found those good. And she looked a bit like Ronnie Spector from the video they showed of Phil Spector's Be My Baby. And I'm thinking, I wonder if that's what attracted Brian to her.
Huh. That's interesting. I hadn't
That,
thought about that.
that just may be that. I'm going to go through my quick written notes here. I don't have a whole lot, but I wrote down a number of things.
Yep.
Mike Love was chewing gum on stage at one point. Do you
Yeah.
think he is John Lennon?
Yeah.
Yeah. There is a great line. I liked everything comes back to the Beatles. It's amazing how much the Beatles figured into this documentary. And the point where they mentioned that Brian was not schooled, didn't know limits. And I was thinking, that's the same as the Beatles. It
Yeah.
really says something about that level of creativity that
Yep.
can come out of that.
I picked up on that too. Yeah, that really does show, yeah, the similarities. Absolutely.
And speaking of Beatles tie-ins, it was lovely seeing Derek Taylor.
Yes.
Didn't really expect that because he's
Yeah.
not that identified with the Beach Boys, but it was interesting to see that.
Mhm.
I must mention, I always hated Mike Love's ba 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 kind of contributions to the various songs because you've got these gorgeous harmonies and then ba 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 ba. It just grates on me when I hear it.
Yeah.
I love the early stuff as well as the later stuff, but
Mhm.
it's very strange.
Yeah.
Apparently, and I think this is my last Beatles reference.
Mhm.
The Get Back documentary certainly laid the groundwork for some profanity to creep in.
Yes.
I love Brian's F-bomb and Take Two to cover it up,
Yeah.
and a couple of uses of the S word as well. So that was funny.
Yeah.
And sorry, one last Beatles thing.
Mhm.
At one point, there were 2 shots of them playing a violin bass like Paul's.
Yes.
So I was surprised at that because most of the time you see Bruce Johnson playing a Rickenbacker. So I don't know.
Yeah. Mhm.
I will also mention the subtitle. I watch almost everything with subtitles turned on.
Yeah,
The
that's a good idea.
subtitles, give them credit, they use the subtitles on the lyrics.
Mhm.
And they showed some things in those lyrics that I didn't know were there.
Mhm.
There are certain songs where I just don't know what the lyrics were. The big one being I Get Around.
Mhm.
Because those high-pitched things, it's like the high-pitched section of Tell Me Why by the Beatles. You can't tell what they're singing.
Yeah.
And I never got those lines. I didn't know they were talking about bread and a head and things like that.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But to drop off the second half of their career
Yeah.
just makes no sense to me.
Exactly.
There's another documentary from a few years back, Eric Clapton's Life in 12 Bars, that if memory serves, I didn't go back to look at it again, but if memory serves, they did something rather similar where they went up to a certain point and then just stopped. And that seems to be a trend these days. They get to something happy and then they cut it. But what it does, the disservice that it does is makes it seem like the surf music is really all they contributed to music.
Yeah.
And it's not.
Right.
That stuff they did with the psychedelic material and with the other things, which were clearly them trying to do their version of what they thought Smile should have been.
Yeah.
And not really pulling it off in all cases. But then you get a masterpiece like Feel Flows. And I mean, that is just a gorgeous song. That one we never covered in the cover band. But when I watched Almost Famous, they used Feel Flows in the closing credits.
Yeah.
And I fell totally in love with that song.
Wow.
So that was another one like that.
Yeah.
And Surf's Up, they showed bits of it.
Yeah. And barely.
They showed the piano demo that Brian did. They had an instrumental section of the orchestral portion, but they didn't really show how it all came together, particularly with that last coda, which is just, you get chills when you hear that song, and it's magnificent.
Yeah.
And also Breakaway should have been mentioned because that was one of Brian's last shots for the band before he really did pull away from 70 to 76 or so, because I think Breakaway was 69.
Okay.
I may be mistaken about that. I'll have to look it up again.
Yep. Yeah.
But then they should have covered 15 Big Ones because it did give them a career resurgence, even though they squandered it afterward with Love You and Light album and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they should have covered where it went with Kokomo, and that should have been where
Right.
they ended it, or they should have taken it all the way into what Smile became.
Right.
First of all, Brian Wilson Presents Smile from
Yes.
2004, where he
Mhm.
got a group together and made that magnificent version of the thing, both video and audio. And then finally, the Capitol release of the Beach Boys Smile Sessions, the big
Mhm.
one, the
Yep.
big super deluxe one, which even though it's flawed, is gorgeous and has a
Yeah.
lot of fantastic material.
Yeah.
And to me, that would have put such a nice positive spin on the story that they could have ended it there, even with the couple of clips they did.
Yeah. I was.
Also,
Yeah. I
sorry,
was.
go ahead.
No. I was going to say I was surprised too when they mentioned Smile, and then I was waiting for them to say, and they eventually,
Mhm.
released it. No, nothing. And I
Yep.
just thought, really? I mean, And as you were talking, I was just thinking, didn't they have a hit in the '70s that also was kind of about "Do It Again"? Wasn't that what the?
Yeah, well, that's again, that's part of that same period. I can't remember for sure which album that was from. I don't think it was Carl and the Passion So Tough, but it
Mhm.
was around that period where they were doing some neat things.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Where
there's a
was
bunch
that?
of songs from that period.
Yeah, I mean, no mention of it. I mean, it
Yeah.
was just so many things here. I want to just show a couple of comments here that I think we could comment on, and as I said, folks, anybody who wants to come up, please do. I want to mention Jonathan Pretus, and by the way, he's the host of a great podcast that I've been on. It's a great one called Ranking the Beatles. So I'm going to embarrass you here, Jonathan. If you want to come up, please do. Great podcast where people come on and you can, you discuss a song per episode, talk about, in depth, and then he ranks the song, and you talk about, is it the number of the song of in a list, and is it a fair ranking or not? It's a great podcast. Anyway, so so I've been thinking about this compared to Get Back. Get Back feels like a Beatles project Disney agreed to put out. The Beach Boys feels like a Disney and Irving Azoff project with Beach Boys involvement. It does seem to feel like Disney may have had more involvement in this documentary, certainly than they did in Get Back. I'm not
I-
sure. I don't know.
I'd
What do you think,
almost
Mark?
I'd almost say it's more Lucasfilm because you have Frank Marshall and Kathleen Kennedy involved in the process.
Yeah,
And they're
true.
Lucasfilm,
Mhm.
which of course is owned by Disney now, but there you go.
Yeah, that's true. It just definitely has a different feel than Get Back. That's for sure. This has more of a sanitized kind of feel. Paulina, hello. Great to see you here. If you want to come up, you feel free to do it. Yeah, you mentioned Marilyn earlier, Mark, and yeah, it says both Marilyn and Diane were very essential to the production of Brian's work. Diana was Brian's production assistant and even scheduled all the recording sessions and booked the wrecking crew. So yeah, I mean that certainly wasn't mentioned
Yeah.
at
I
all.
got to give them credit for going through the stuff with the Wrecking Crew. Those were some neat interviews.
Yes, I was glad they gave them their due.
And Don Randy got a lot of screen time, but he was very compelling.
Yep.
His work with the Wrecking Crew is fantastic to begin with. It was neat seeing Hal Blaine, Carol Kay.
Yes.
The Wrecking Crew is just fantastic.
They really are.
I have one last thing, and then I'll shut up for a bit.
Oh no.
I have to contrast this with the first two episodes of the Stax documentary Soulsville, USA, which I just watched today on Max. I'd been meaning to get to it, hadn't had time, so I watched the first two, and the other two episodes are out there, so I need to watch them after this probably. But that documentary is doing an amazing job, and I'll save any further comments on it until you have your next Chaos and Creation, because we really do need to talk about that one in some depth. What they are doing with contrasting the history of racism in the 60s with the music and bands and musicians of Stax is incredible.
Oh,
So
wow.
I'm really liking what they're doing. I have a couple of issues here and there, but
Mhm.
by and large, that documentary is superior.
Excellent. Oh, I'm so glad. I knew I could get you up here. I knew
Yeah. All it
it.
takes is
So good to
flattery. Come
see
on in.
you.
Good to see you too.
All right. I
And
knew you had some things to say.
I do. And Mark, to jump off of what you were just saying, the Stax documentary series is agreed fantastic. They really have done, I think, an excellent job with that series, and it's equally parts amazing and heartbreaking to watch that whole series. But yeah, so I'll own up at the top of this. I'm a pretty big Beach Boys fan.
Mhm.
Admittedly, I'm also like a pretty big Brian Wilson fan.
Mhm.
So I had my concerns going into it purely just on the running time of an hour and 50 something minutes.
Yep.
It is impossible to accurately tell a 60-year story in under 2 hours.
True.
So I was kind of disappointed from the jump. Now it's the same thing of, like with the Beatles, like because I love this band, I'm excited to watch 2 hours of footage of them doing whatever. Like I think that's going to be great no matter what. And I thought it was interesting. They did focus a lot more on the early years than some of the documentaries do. Like I didn't know that there was a period pre Al Jardine returning that Brian didn't want to tour. Like I thought that wasn't until '64, and that there
Yeah.
was this like crossover time where you had Al and David Marks. That was new, so I thought that was really interesting. But yeah, it did seem very Mike revisionary heavy, which
Mhm.
I kind of expected.
Yeah. I was afraid of that was going to
Yeah,
happen.
I think my compounded kind of disappointment of the running length was that the least covered time in any of the documentaries that exist about the band is that 69 through 79 period. You always jump back in at like Endless Summer and then like the Reagan DC years, like that's always kind of where they end. But there's so many great records that they put out during that time period that don't even get a mention. That's arguably the more interesting, inventive time for the rest of the band. Things like Sunflower, Carl and the Passions, Holland. These are moments where everyone else is stepping up and contributing. Mike has artistically probably his best song is Big Sur. And there's a beautiful version that was on the Sunflower box set a couple years ago that was unreleased because he redid it when they put on Holland, I think it is. And it's a gorgeous song. It's one of his best pieces. And they don't discuss any of that. So I was really kind of bummed about that. And the thing that I think has kind of stuck in my craw the more I've thought about it is it presents Brian's narrative. And granted, there's no shortage of documentaries about Brian also, but it presents Brian as this genius who gets, drugged out and flames out and then kind of goes away. And then now he's this old invalid at the beach who looks really unwell.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't discuss at all the narrative arc of his mental health struggles, his brother's mental health struggles, Mike's mental health struggles, Brian's redemption, the smile completion, like you were talking about, and that's all a huge, important part of this narrative that's completely untouched, that I think kind of makes Brian look like the fool at the end of the day. It's just like, oh, well, he blew it. And then he's just kind of this old guy at the beach. So like that seemed kind of like a disservice at the end. And I think also, not touching on the work that Carl put in leading the, like they kind of allude to it a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's really about, Dennis's solo work, I think deserves some conversation, and Dennis's situation in the band in which, he puts out this great solo record and kind of gets the ultimatum of like, if you go promote this, maybe you're not in the band, and also you need money. And now we're a nostalgia band. So like that kind of, is a big part of Dennis's downfall. So that's kind of what's made me think about this Disney-led thing of it, is like, they're not going to focus on like the darker side of the story, which is so important to understand the whole story. So I think that's, and there's a lot of the darker stuff in the Get Back story is part of Get Back.
Right.
You know, like you really get a picture of the whole thing, which makes the whole scene easier to understand, and you lose a lot of that in the Beach Boys documentary. So
Yeah.
I'm really on the whole like pretty disappointed in this. I was hoping like this seemed like the last chance to get that big multi-part, you know, multi-hour thing. And maybe it doesn't need to be 8 hours, but however
Right.
Bon Jovi has a 4-part documentary and the Beach Boys have an hour and 57 minutes, I don't understand.
Thank you. Thank you. Exactly. I mean, yeah, you got the sense like, you know, toward the end, I mean, where they wanted this to go. It was like, oh, the rebirth of the band, and you know, the pictures of the crowd and they're clapping along and it's all nostalgia and, you know, America's band, and it's, you know, yeah, I mean, it's like, well, that's not the whole story. I mean, you know, and they just wanted it to be a feel good documentary.
They didn't even mention the politics that are around the Beach Boys live appearances in the 80s and such, which I think should have been at least touched on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Even now,
but that's controversial, of course.
They've somehow found themselves a very controversial political band even now, where just a couple of years ago, Brian and Al both put out a statement condemning Mike and his Beach Boys for playing a Trump rally at Mar-a-Lago. And they vehemently like, we are not a part of this. That is the Mike Love, Bruce Johnston wing of this whole enterprise. And like, it's unusual that this is all part of the conversation. It doesn't get discussed.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, as Paulina said, yeah, it should have been at least a 2 or 3 part documentary. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I think they could have, you know, definitely gone through more, you know, more of this material. I mean, it just, you know, and again, I guess we have to think about, you know, what the audience was for this. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, I guess if you're saying, well, this is meant to be sort of a, you know, for the general fan and they wanted to appeal to a wide audience. I suppose, you know, this does appeal to that. You know, it's kind of a general introduction to the band. You know, I still think though, as I said, it needs to, you know, explore more about, you know, what made the Beach Boys. I mean, yes, it's America's band and it's fun and it had, you know, surf music and yay, but it did need to, I think, explain more what made them so unique and what they, you know, really, you know, added to, you know, contributed to music, and what, you know, how they and the Beatles, you know, how they inspired each other. I mean, they talked about that a bit, but I felt like they could have said more about that. I mean, I just, I felt that was kind of incomplete. Hey, Paulina.
Hey, Kate. Hi, everyone.
Hi, good to see you.
You too.
All right.
Yeah, after seeing the documentary, I think I was like feeling like this could have been longer, because I feel like there's like so much more that could have been discussed. Like, I feel like they could have discussed the 70s era a whole lot more. They should have discussed, you didn't even talk about, like, you know, Dennis's drowning, or Carl, like, you know, getting his cancer. They didn't talk about anything about like what was going on in the 80s, because I feel like in the 80s, the Beach Boys were lending their music to soundtracks. Like, you know, you had Still Cruisin' that went to Lethal Weapon, I think, and Kokomo that went to Cocktail, Make It Big that went to True Beverly Hills. So they're having that kind of resurgence in the 80s, and then, like, you know, everything that went on, like, you know, the albums getting like reissued, the involvement of Mark Lynette in the 90s, and finally getting that stereo pet sounds, you know, that we've always wanted to hear. And and I also felt like, you know, they should have touched on at least, you know, That's Why God Made the Radio. That was a beautiful album.
That was a great album. Yeah, I was saying that earlier. I mean, really, no mention of that. That was a great album. And nothing. I was just amazed that about that. I don't know, you know, as I said earlier, maybe because the tour ended, thanks to Mike, on a bad note, you know, but, you know, he kicked out Brian and Al. I don't know if, you know, Mike just didn't really want to mention that. I don't know. But
that's the thing that I hated at the end. It's like, you know, Mike was playing the sympathy card at the end. It's like, you know, dude, you're the one that instigated all of the bad blood between you and Brian and the other guys, and now you're asking for the sympathy from the bands, like I wasn't buying it at all.
I didn't either. Yeah. The cry, when he was tearing up, and I just thought, oh, come on, you know.
Like, here's the world's smallest violin for you, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was a little silly. And and I'll tell you, my father actually met Mike Love. This must have been in like the late 80s, early 90s. My father used to work for Waste Management. He was their marketing person, and he met with him because at the time, I guess he had an idea to he wanted to thought that they could convert landfills into concert venues, and Dad pretty much said it wouldn't work. I mean, it just
some kind of metaphor there.
Yeah, I mean, it just so much. There'd be so much money involved to retrofit them that it just.
Isn't that the plot of Poltergeist 4?
Exactly. But at the time, so they met, and and Dad was very polite to him and said, oh, I was a big fan, and all that stuff, and Mike actually said to him that he was the one that kept them going, that none of them really wanted to work, and that he really was the one that kept them going and kept them on tour, that because of him. That
I will counter that with a discussion I had this morning with my wife. Kit, you might have seen the video that I posted earlier today of the song "Summer of Love."
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, okay. It's from the Summer in Paradise album. It's Mike Love rapping.
Oh, I did see that. Yes, I saw that. Yes. Oh my God. Okay.
Different
one. Whoa.
So my question is, yes, he's kept them going. But to what end? What value have, aside from the 2012 reunion, what value has any of that time added to the brand that they're so desperately trying to rebuild now? All that's done has been detrimental and in some ways negated all the artistic goodwill that they built up over the years. One of the things that I think has benefited the Beatles is that they stopped. They never went through that period of embarrassment that the Beach Boys have gone through, whether it's that or like there's this really cheesy Mike Love and David Marks pay tribute to NASCAR CD that floats around from the early 90s of like bad re-recordings of early Beach Boys songs with NASCAR lyrics. Like,
yikes.
There have been all these horribly cheesy things that just dilute the brand that they had. So what's been the point?
Yep, and who could
30 years going?
Yep, and who could forget their collaborations with the Fat Boys?
Yes, those were so good.
Remember that?
I had those songs when I was a kid.
I mean, now no dissing the Fat Boys, because I mean I grew up with the hip hop and their beatboxing was awesome and all, but that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they were trying to appeal to a younger generation and everything. I get it, but
no, I think what when they're trying to appeal to a younger generation, that's when they start to hang out with John Stamos, and John Stamos was like putting them in almost every Full House episode.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah, where was John Stamos in this documentary?
I
was shocked that he was not there, but in a way, I was also saying John Stamos better not be in this documentary.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't excited to see him. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't like, oh, damn it. He's not in there.
I got to mention one other thing that I'd forgotten about. There's that scene early on when they're recording Surfin', that they mentioned that Brian played drums, a drum with a pencil.
Mm-hmm.
I can do him one better. When I started making multi-track recordings in the early 70s, I put a piece of paper over a garbage can and played it with a chopstick.
Yeah. There you go.
I got to try that out. I have to try that out.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I went through the paper a few times.
I also thought it was really interesting. There's this great segment of footage from, I think, live footage from 73 when they've got Blondie Chaplin and Ricky Fataar in the band, and they're just smoking rock band. Where is Ricky Fataar in all this? He's not represented at all.
He was briefly interviewed.
Briefly.
Was that archival or was that new? Because I feel like
that I don't know because they don't put years on anything.
Yeah,
I think it may have been archival, but don't quote me on that. I'm not sure. It didn't look brand new.
Story a lot, which is interesting because Blondie is definitely kind of re-cemented himself in as far as being in Brian's band, but we hear nothing from Ricky Fataar.
Ricky Fataar, he rarely speaks about his time with Beach Boys. I think he's more proud of his time with the Ruddles than he was.
And at least
I think he plays
Mike Love didn't sue himself accidentally.
Yeah.
I think Ricky plays drums for Bonnie Raitt now, so maybe he's just too busy.
Really?
Oh, really? Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool.
He's still working. He's still out there.
Cool.
Nice. Just a couple of comments here. I saw an interview with Mike a few weeks ago where he almost let it slip that something else is coming, but he wouldn't say what it is. Maybe a DVD release with more of the story. Well, maybe. I mean, that'd be if there's more commentary. I don't know. He also said, I felt Kokomo was way out of place playing during the credits. Yeah, I mean, it was almost like they're like, oh, damn, we forgot about Kokomo. Well, we'll just put it in the credits. I mean,
because there's no context for it. That's the problem. What they should have put on was All Summer Long, because that was the closing track on Endless Summer, and it would have fit with the brief they were trying to tell.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that probably would have made more sense. And so,
executive producer Mike Love wanted his publishing money.
Yeah, probably. Exactly.
May I ask a question, since you guys are probably bigger Beach Boys fans than I am? The version of Help Me Rhonda that was on Endless Summer was not the original single version because it didn't have the harmonies on the choruses. Does anybody know how that happened or what that version is from?
It's originally
it's probably on the Endless Harmony soundtrack. Because I think Mark Lynette
Endless Summer
remixing. Endless.
That's where I heard it.
It was Endless Harmony, that documentary that came out back in '99, I believe.
Yeah, but this was in '73 when the double vinyl album was released.
Okay.
They originally recorded it for the Summer Days and Summer Nights album, and that's the version without the harmonies. Then they redid it as the single version. That's the version that a lot more.
Actually, it was recorded for the Today album. There was a version on it that was on Today, and I feel the Today version is way better than the single version that they end up putting on Summer Days and Summer Nights.
Yeah.
I think the Summer Days and Summer Nights version was more cheesy, whereas it was more down to earth. The Today version,
I don't know. Thank God I've got some diehards here.
The thing that I wish that they should have touched on was the Hype Morgan sessions. It would have been great that they could have talked more about like the early recordings that they did of Surfer Safari and Surfer Girl, as well, like touch a little bit on how Kenny and the Cadets came to be doing Barbie and what's the Young Girl Made Of. Those are really stellar recordings too. I love them.
And they should have covered the Chuck Berry tie-in to Surfin' USA.
Oh, right. They didn't. Good point.
They showed, if I remember correctly, they did show a very neat Chuck Berry clip, which was footage I have not seen before. Very clear, good footage. But they didn't mention the fact that it was his melody.
Yeah, that's right. They didn't. Yeah, maybe they didn't want to bring that up.
Maybe, and in fact, that's another thing. They were saying groups in the 50s and 60s before the Beatles never wrote their own material. Yeah, well, Chuck Berry was writing his songs. Little Richard was writing his songs. Buddy Holly was writing his songs.
Yeah, right. So that's not quite true. Yeah, exactly. So yeah. So hi, Susan. Yeah, it's
Hi,
too much
Susan.
Mike. Yeah, too much Mike Love. Yes, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've heard, and I know, I and the rest of us, we've been kind of, kind of ripping it, but I mean, there are some parts, that, I mean, it's not like I wouldn't say, oh my God, don't watch this. There are some interesting parts to it, but it does have flaws.
Al Jardine's contributions probably made it worthwhile just on those,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
because we haven't heard much from him in the past.
Yep. That's
At least
true.
I haven't.
Yep. So,
But I wish he'd mentioned Susie Cincinnati, because I adore that song.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Hi, George. Yes. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not. We're not saying don't see it. We're not saying that, but just kind of keep in mind it leaves a lot out. So you may have some gripes. Let's see. Matthew said, "Isn't there
You're correct.
Yeah, two versions of Be True to Your School."
Yep, the version on Endless Summer does not have the chants.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah,
cheerleading
that version,
chants. Those are
that
gone.
version is on the Little Do Scoop album, and then they re-recorded it with the Honeys doing the chant.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
And did I see a very young Carney and Wendy Wilson at one point when they were little kids?
I think
There was
maybe
one scene.
Yeah, there's I think it's Brian's 30th birthday party. Maybe it's Brian's
you're
birthday
right.
party, and Paul and Linda are there because that footage is used in the American Band documentary. I think maybe.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of Paul and Brian footage in that documentary, which is kind of neat. They're like sitting next to each other while they're like cutting the birthday cake, and it's very sweet.
Nice.
Yeah. This is interesting. Yeah, so back when Help Me Rhonda was a hit, I would hear two different versions on the radio, but I don't know their story.
Yeah, the version that was on today was mainly used for like the longest time on like a lot of compilations, all the way up to the last time they did the first version of the Good Vibrations greatest hits that came out in, I think it was like in '95. But then when they reissued it, they reverted to the Summer Days and Summer Nights version. But the version that was used on Endless Summer was the Today version.
Okay. Yep. And yeah, as you said, George, yeah, that many artists and bands were writing their own material. Absolutely. It doesn't take much love to be too much love. Yes, absolutely. Completely agree. Yeah, I mean, it's I was afraid that could happen, that this would be, and particularly seeing it was an official documentary, and but yeah, I mean, and unfortunately it is being promoted. I think I saw on the promotional poster, it said something like, this is the definitive documentary, sort of the last word. Like,
It's not.
No, it isn't. It really isn't. There is a lot left out, and there are other documentaries that have been done on them, right? There's been
Endless Harmony. Endless Harmony. That was their answer to the whole Beatles anthology.
Yeah.
That's why they did it, because the Beatles anthology was like a big one, so they teamed up with ABC at the time to do that one as well.
That's right. Yep, I remember.
I also saw somebody on YouTube saying that you should watch Love and Mercy, the film with Paul Dano, before this, but I did not do that. So.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. I've got it. That's always been on my list.
Oh, that's a beautiful film. I feel like out of all the biopics they ever did on the subject of the Beach Boys, Love and Mercy truly is the definitive one to watch.
Yeah.
And plus you have like a really good soundtrack that was not only incorporated the Beach Boys stuff, but a really nice sound collage done by Atticus Fitch.
Ross.
Atticus Ross
from 9 Inch Nails.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which he got a Grammy for. Him and Trent Reznor.
Yeah, Atticus Ross has been doing music for a lot of films. I don't necessarily care for his style, but he's very prolific.
Mhm.
Making
And
a
also
very
the
good mark.
Beautiful Dreamer documentary that came out when Brian finished Smile is a fantastic look
I
at the
think I
completion
watched
of
that one.
That's a
That's
beautiful
really
one. I loved it.
Mhm. Yep. So definitely others out there to watch. Oh, this is interesting. It says in a pre-interview with Love, he states how the Beach Boys and the Beatles were on the same level. I was really confused on that comment. Well, I mean, they both were inventive, in different ways. I don't know if I would say, I don't know if I'd say the same level. I
They
mean,
could have been,
yeah.
just maybe.
Hmm.
I would dearly like to know what the public reaction would have been if Smile had been released in
Mhm.
67 after Sergeant Pepper and somebody like Capitol had actually promoted the darn thing.
Yeah.
I have a feeling it wouldn't have gone over well at that time,
No.
but I wish they could have done it and seen what the reaction would be, because certainly I think in the UK it would have been appreciated.
Yeah.
I think that was a fault on Capitol Records on their end because, when he did Pet Sounds, Capitol Records really wasn't keen on promoting it, and
Yeah.
I
And
feel
to
like
put out the best of the Beach Boys to kill it, just
Yeah.
yeah,
kill their own product, for
Yeah.
crying out loud. Terrible.
they should have said, okay, let's promote this, get let's get this out there, let's tell people about it. I feel like if it would have gotten the promotion that it deserved, then it would have been well received here in America when it came out. That's same thing with Smile. If it would have been released, Capitol should have also promoted that as well. But they were so busy wanting to promote the stereotype that they're trying to escape.
Yeah. Well, you know what they were thinking. We're the cars. We're the girls.
Yeah,
Where's the turf?
we're the
Yeah. I mean, that was it. And instead, they were, trying to outgrow that image and show that what else they could do. And so,
Well, I think Brian Wilson was trying to outgrow that, whereas Mike Love was trying to hold on to it.
well, sure, they were like, "Hey, we've got the money train is he's going. Why would we screw around with that?"
He was
Absolutely.
trying to milk the cash cow, and the teat was a little hard to find.
That's right. I'm gonna have that
There's
put
that-
on a T-shirt.
there's
I like
that famous Mike. There's that famous Mike Love quote from that time of, don't F with the formula. Like,
Right.
they're the number one band in England at that time, and they come home to something drastically different, and it just, that caused big problems. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's a shame.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it really is. Let's see. It's, I love this, Matthew. I love Smile, but still rate Piper, Kinks, something else, Hendrix debut from the same year higher.
So Peter Piper picked up. Never mind.
Yeah, a lot of competition there. That's for sure. But
Heck of a year for music.
yes, it was.
Just astonishing.
Absolutely. But yeah. And by the way, Mark knows this. He's taken a number of my classes. If you haven't already, if you really want to listen to just how much the Four Freshmen influenced the Beach Boys, dig into their catalog. It's astounding. And they are just fantastic. I mean, just their harmonies were just so complicated, and it just also shows you how talented Brian Wilson was, that he could figure out those harmonies, because good Lord, were they intricate. And so, yeah, if you dig into their catalog, really recommend it. Just gorgeous harmonies, and really credit Brian for bringing those jazz harmonies into rock and roll. Just what a genius, he was. I mean, and is, but yeah, check out their, it's on Spotify, wherever you get your music. Well worth listening to.
Mm-hmm.
Just gorgeous. And as soon as you hear it, you'll say, "Oh my God, this is where he got all his inspiration." It's just fantastic. So overall, I mean, would you all recommend? I mean, would you say skip it, or would you still say watch it? Mark, we'll start with you. What would you?
Oh, certainly it should be watched with the caveat that it stops way too early
Yep. Absolutely.
and glosses over a few important things.
Yep. Yep. Paulina, what's your final verdict?
Definitely watch it, and I also will recommend watching it in tandem with Endless Harmony. I feel like, if you watch both documentaries, you're going to get the full story. And as well as, I think it was Mark that mentioned it, or Jonathan,
Love and Mercy.
Love and Mercy and A Beautiful Dreamer documentary as well.
Okay. Great. And round it out with Jonathan. What do you think?
I think watch it. It's the footage. Some of the footage in it is really great. It's a well presented documentary. I don't think it's the definitive. I hope it's not the final. I still hope that they get that multi-part series that they deserve. I hope that person that did the multi-part McCartney documentaries on YouTube a few years ago will do the same thing for them because they deserve that. But yeah, I think watch it and enjoy it. But caveat, there's a lot more than meets the eye there.
Yep, I agree. I'd say watch it, but yeah, with the caveat that this is just kind of an overview, shall we say, of just a general overview of the Beach Boys, and that there are other documentaries out there that maybe have a more complete picture, as we're going to get, and also check out the film Love and Mercy about Brian. And then, as you said, Jonathan, maybe we'll get a fan-made, maybe a fan-made documentary that'll be even better. So
I need an hour on how the Love You album got made, at least an hour on that album.
There you go. There you go. So, yeah.
Let me add one other thing. There's a review of the soundtrack from the documentary on the second disc. And they say that it's a good and varied listen, but like the documentary, it ends after the boys' first 2 decades, and it doesn't offer anything new for collectors beyond Steven Sanchez's new song, Baby Blue Bathing Suit, which has no Beach Boys involvement. And Kokomo is absent.
Okay, so be warned.
Yeah, it's 90 minutes long, but it might be worth getting one of the other Beach Boys collections.
Gotcha. All right.
But I will say this about Kokomo. When they played it in the credits, I think that they remixed it, because I was listening to it on my television set, and I was starting to hear things that, wait a minute, I don't remember hearing that part in the recording before. So I think
sure they remixed everything because they mixed it for 5.1.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it sounded beautiful. It actually sounded.
And it's nice surround. It's decent surround.
Yep. Exactly. So, yep. So, yes, as Susan says here, watch it, but be aware it is not as in depth as it should be.
Agreed.
So, absolutely. So, but boy, this has been a great discussion with some true Beach Boys fans. I mean, I am too, but you guys are even more in depth than I am. So, so before we go, anything that you guys want to promote? How about Jonathan? Any Ranking the Beatles episodes coming up?
Yeah,
always a great show.
Well, thank you, Kid. I appreciate it. It's always a blast to have you on. We're in the middle of new episodes right now. We had one out this past week on Everybody's Got Something to Hide with me and except for me and my monkey, with Brian Marchese, who's the host of a podcast called Where's That Sound Coming From, which looks at the songwriting career of Michael Nesmith, which is really, really good. We have an episode coming up this week with Caitlin Larkin from the Sirius XM channel.
Sure.
So it's a whole lot of fun. The premise is I rank the entire catalog of my own personal preference, least favorite to most favorite. Nobody's right or wrong because it's all subjective fun. So if you're looking for fun Beatles listening, that's what we do.
Absolutely, and I've been on the show, and it's always a blast.
I've been hearing Caitlin Larkin on Sirius XM Beatle channel. She's doing a magnificent job.
Yes, she is.
She's fabulous there.
She's a great person. So so don't just. I'll put the link in the description after the show is over. Yeah, absolutely. So don't miss it. Great show. Paulina, what are you up to? Anything?
So I have like a lot of things going on in my life right now, but one of the things is I'm finishing up my album, and so I'm going to be posting a lot of the songs that's on my my album onto my channel, as well as it's going to have commentary about the story of each song and recording. And I'm also thinking about maybe doing like a video on my experience with Mind Games, since that's coming up, and I can't wait to hear how that turns out. You know, it's a beautiful album, so I know it's going to be a great release that we're going to get in a month or so.
Absolutely. So, yep. So, I should just put your channel in the description. Is that the best link, or do you want to send me? Other...
I could put a link there.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, just put a link there, and I'll put it in the description.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. And so, Mark, anything that you want to share that's going on in your life, or?
Well, I can actually plug that I appeared a couple of weeks ago on Ed Rising's podcast, where he went over the Let It Be movie. So I got to participate in that. Other than that, I've been participating in the live chats of a podcast called The Seventh Rule and Virtual TrekCon, which is about Star Trek. Been heavily involved in that. Unfortunately, some of that tends to conflict with Talk More Talk live broadcasts. So since I paid some money to get into the virtual TrekCon and Seventh Rule thing, I've been giving that a slight priority.
That's all right. That's all right. You paid for that. Understood.
But yeah, it's a pay-to-play world, unfortunately.
Gotcha.
But other than that, just keep listening to music and watching stuff on TV.
All right. Well, I'll put Ed's podcast down there too. So I know that one. So yeah, I was supposed to be on that one that you were on as well, and I couldn't do it because I think I was when I was preparing for my class, so I couldn't do it. But but I will be on one of those in the future. Okay, and then of course, as you guys know, subscribe to Talk More Talk right here on this channel. We will be back a week from tomorrow with another episode. And check out my other podcast, Toppermost of the Poppermost. We have new episodes out. May episodes are coming out. And of course, next month we're recording the June episodes as we speak. So we're really having fun with that. You can find that on toppermostofthepoppermost.net. So thank you all for joining us. If you are in the States, have a great holiday weekend, and we support, of course, all of our troops. Remember those who have served. So thank you, all of you guys, for joining us, and thank you to Mark and Jonathan, Paulina, for joining me on camera. This was a great discussion. Love to have you guys back. And hang on just for a second as we go off air here. So there you go. Beach Boys forever. So hope we gave you some good information about this documentary. And thank you for all the comments here. Thank you for all your great and your support of Talk More Talk and all of our shows. So thanks again, and we will see you soon. As Ringo says, peace and love. Talk to you soon.